The bird, one of the most complex creatures in the animal kingdom. They are one of a few that have the ability of flight and have evolved from a unique set of ancestors.
Early birds evolved from the velociraptor and other theropods like it. From the velociraptor, the bird evolved to the Archaeopteryx, which then evolved into the Columbo, which is the bird we know as today. There are three distinct skeletal features of the modern bird that are different than the bird we know it evolved from: the pelvis, the clavicle, and the wrist.
The pelvis and its pubic bone were originally found pointed forward in Coleophysis, who lived about 250 million years. Fast forward about 179 million years to Velociraptor, and we see that the pubic bone is larger and swung back as opposed to swung forward.
In the early form of the bird, Archaeopteryx, the pubic bone is longer and pointed straight down. In the modern bird, the pubic bone is relatively small in relation to the rest of the pelvis and is infused with the entire mass of the bone. Another changing feature is the clavicle. In its first phase, coleophysis, the bone is not fused. Throughout time, the clavicle fused together, forming a U-shaped bone that became critical in the bird's flight.
The wrists of Coleophysis start out looking more like a human hand than an actual. Moving to the Velociraptor, we can start to see a wing-like structure. In Archaeopteryx, the wing-like structure now can be used for flight with the addition of feathers. All of the bird's skeletal features have uniquely evolved to maximize its ability to fly and survive in its environment.
Natural selection can change certain inherited traits, such as the size of the beak, displayed in the Galapagos finch. There are different beaks for different tasks, all depending on what the finch needs to survive and overcome selective pressures. By the change of environmental factors and pressures, the beak type will change in the generations to come through reproduction. After many generations of variation and isolation, we can see a population change as a result of natural selection.
Population isolation in birds primarily affects populations of flightless birds because of a limitation of mate choices that affects them. This is true in kiwi birds, which need a beak of at least 10.5 inches to survive through catching bugs, thus increasing their rate of offspring and their survivability. Mutation creates new variations through natural selection because bird traits that lead to greater success in mating or hunting will produce more offspring, thus passing on the mutation to further generations of birds. Selection causes changes within the population of an interbreeding species that change the frequency of alleles. Reproductive barriers affect birds in the process of fertilization between sperm and egg or postcopulatory reproductive barriers. Sexual imprinting appears in isolated populations of birds through the inheritance of mating traditions like plumage. Also, song, morphology, and plumage, which are inherited mating patterns from their parents, are transferred to the young through teaching, thus continuing the cycle of mating rituals within certain species of birds, like the peacock with its plumage.
Understanding evolution can give us a more complete and complex view of life. Also, this understanding is essential to our survival. Understanding evolution can be exemplified in the medical field. The understanding of the evolution of deadly pathogens like the H5N1 virus can be critical to creating vaccines to combat that virus and to stop the spread and transmission of that virus.
By learning a pathogen's genealogy through its evolution process, it helps us to find out its method of reproduction and transmission. This helps officials by providing preventative solutions to transmission. Knowing how the pathogen evolves sheds light on how resistant it has become and how adaptive it is to medicine. Therefore, creating vaccines is possible.
Another example of how evolution affects our decision making is in agriculture. The question farmers usually ask is, will that strain of crop grow more abundantly than the other? Knowing the evolutionary process of a particular strain of crop can inform your decision to grow one or the other.